purchases, and control your behavior with the push of a button, not a distant dystopian future, not a conspiracy theory from the fringes of the internet. An actively developed system being tested right now in multiple countries, with infrastructure already built, legislation already drafted, implementation already scheduled, and the Federal Reserve has been planning this for years while assuring you it's just about modernization, about convenience, about keeping America competitive. But the truth behind the digital dollar is something far more sinister, something they can never admit publicly. Because if you understood what they're really building, you'd fight it with everything you have. Let me show you the prison they're constructing around your financial freedom. 2023, July. The Federal Reserve releases a paper, The Future of Money and Payments. Sounds boring, technical, the kind of document nobody reads. But buried in the jargon is a statement that should terrify every American. The Fed is actively researching and developing a central bank digital currency, a CBDC, a digital dollar that would exist only in computers, controlled entirely by the Federal Reserve, programmable, traceable, controllable, every transaction visible, every purchase tracked, every financial decision monitored in real time by the government. They frame it as progress, as innovation, as America keeping pace with China and Europe, who are already rolling out their digital currencies. But here's what they don't say in the press releases. What they can't say, a central bank digital currency isn't just digital money, it's a control mechanism unlike anything that's ever existed in human history. It's the ability to program behavior, to enforce compliance, to punish dissent, to create a financial system where every dollar you own can be frozen, confiscated, or made unspendable based on criteria determined by bureaucrats you never elected. And they're building it right now. While you're distracted by inflation and bank failures and political theater, the infrastructure is being constructed, the legal framework is being established, the public is being conditioned to accept it. And once it's implemented, once physical cash is eliminated and all money exists only in a digital form they control, there's no going back, no escape, no financial privacy, no economic freedom, just total surveillance and absolute control dressed up as convenience. I think I'm exaggerating. Let me show you what's already happening. China launched the digital yuan in 2020, the CBDC that serves as the blueprint for what's coming everywhere else. And it's not just digital payments. It's programmable money. The Chinese government can set expiration dates on currency, force you to spend it within a certain time frame, or it disappears. They can restrict where you spend it, prevent you from buying certain goods. They can see every transaction, every purchase, every transfer, and they can freeze your money instantly if they determine you've violated social credit rules, attended the wrong protest, posted the wrong opinion online, associated with the wrong people. Your money simply stops working, and you have no recourse, no appeal, no cash alternative, because cash is being eliminated. And you might think that's China. Authoritarian, communist, could never happen in America, but Canada proved otherwise. February 2022, the trucker convoy protests in Ottawa, people peacefully demonstrating against vaccine mandates. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did something unprecedented in a Western democracy. He invoked emergency powers and ordered banks to freeze the accounts of protesters. Without warrants, without due process, without criminal charges, if you donated to the convoy, if you participated, if you were even suspected of supporting them, your bank account was frozen, your credit card stopped working, your money became inaccessible, and you were financially destroyed with the stroke of a pen. Over 200 bank accounts frozen, credit cards canceled, financial lives ruined, and the mechanism they used, the existing digital banking system, because your money isn't really yours. It's ones and zeros in a database controlled by institutions that answer to government. And when government decides you're a problem, your money vanishes. But there was still cash, still ways to transact outside the system. For now, a central bank digital currency eliminates even those options, makes what happened in Canada instant, that kind of power over your life because that's what we're talking about. Not convenient digital payments. We already have those Venmo, PayPal, credit cards, Apple Pay. This is different. This is programmable money controlled by central banks. Money that can be turned off, money that expires, money that can only be spent on approved purchases, money that's tracked in real time by government agencies, money that isn't really money at all. It's permission, revocable permission to participate in the economy. And the Federal Reserve knows exactly what they're building. They've studied China's system, they've consulted with the European Central Bank, they've war gamed the implementation. They know the power they're creating and they want it. Not because they're evil, but because centralized power always wants more control, always believes it knows better, always thinks that with just a little more authority, a little more surveillance, a little more ability to manage and direct and control, they can create the perfect system. But perfect for whom? For you or for them? Let's go back, understand how we got here, because this didn't start with CBDCs. It started with a slow erosion of financial privacy that's been happening for decades. Each step seeming reasonable, each sacrifice of freedom justified by security or convenience or fighting crime. 1970, the Bank Secrecy Act required banks to report transactions over $10,000. Seemed reasonable. Catch drug dealers, stop money laundering, fight organized crime. Who could argue with that? But it established the precedent that government has the right to know about your financial transactions, that privacy isn't absolute, that monitoring is acceptable if the cause is just 2001. The Patriot Act after 9/11 expanded financial surveillance dramatically. Banks required to report suspicious activity, definitions vague, criteria broad, the war on terror justifying unprecedented intrusion. And again, who could argue? Terrorists need to be stopped. If you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to hide, right? Except the definition of wrong keeps expanding and the surveillance keeps growing and the power keeps concentrating until we reach 2025, where the average American has virtually no financial privacy. Every bank transaction recorded, every credit card purchase tracked, every Venmo transfer logged. The government doesn't need a warrant, doesn't need probable cause, just needs to request the data, and banks comply because they have to. Because the system was built that way, but you still had cash, physical currency, the last vestige of financial privacy. Buy something with cash and there's no record, no tracking, no surveillance, just a simple exchange between two people. The way humans have traded for thousands of years, and that's exactly why they want to eliminate it. The war on cash has been escalating for years. Banks closing accounts for people who deposit too much cash, stores refusing to accept large bills, limits on ATM withdrawals, negative interest rates making holding cash costly, and the narrative always the same. Cash is for criminals, drug dealers, tax evaders, terrorists. You want privacy, you must be hiding something. If you use cash, you're probably breaking the law. But here's what they never say. Cash is freedom, the ability to transact without permission, to spend without surveillance, to live without every financial decision being recorded and analyzed and judged. And they can't control what they can't see. Can't tax what they can't track. Can't punish what they can't prove. And that terrifies them because control requires visibility, requires information, requires the elimination of anything that exists outside their purview. If this is making you if you're starting to see the cage being built around you, subscribe now. Because what comes next will change everything you thought you knew about money and freedom. The central bank digital currency is the final piece. The tool that makes total financial control possible, and they're not even hiding it anymore. They're openly discussing the benefits, the ability to program spending, to implement negative interest rates that force consumption, to distribute stimulus directly, to collect taxes automatically, to monitor the entire economy in real time, to prevent illegal transactions before they happen, is controlled. Because in the digital presentations, in the technical papers, in the planning documents not meant for public consumption, they discuss the real capabilities, the ability to set rules to prevent purchases of carbon intensive goods, to limit transactions based on vaccine status, to enforce geographic restrictions, to expire currency that isn't spent quickly enough, to negative rate savings, to confiscate wealth with algorithm precision. And they frame it as positive, as tools to fight climate change, to prevent pandemics, to ensure equity, to protect democracy. Always noble causes, always righteous justifications, but the mechanism is the same: control through money, through the elimination of any financial transaction that happens outside government visibility. The Federal Reserve's pilot program with major banks, the FedNow instant payment system launched in July 2023. The infrastructure is already being built. The rails on which a digital dollar would run, they call it modernization. Faster payments, 24/7 settlement, but look at what it actually creates. A system where every financial institution is directly connected to the Federal Reserve, where every transaction can be monitored in real time, where the technical capability for instant freezing, instant confiscation, instant control already exists. They're just waiting for the right crisis, the right justification, the right moment of public fear when people will accept anything that promises safety. And that moment is coming, or will be created, because that's how paradigm shifts happen. Not through slow acceptance, but through crisis, through emergency, through the exploitation of fear and chaos to implement changes that would be rejected under normal circumstances. Think about COVID. How quickly cash was demonized as a disease vector. How rapidly contactless payments became the norm. How willingly people accepted restrictions on movement, on gathering, on basic freedoms, all in the name of public health, and how many of those temporary measures became permanent. How the precedent of government power expanded and never contracted back. The next crisis, whether it's another pandemic, a cyber attack on the banking system, a climate emergency, or financial collapse, will be used the same way. The solution will be presented as obvious, necessary, temporary. Implement the digital dollar to prevent chaos, to ensure stability, to protect the public, and people will accept it because the alternative will be framed as collapse, as danger, as the end of everything. But here's what they won't tell you: the digital dollar isn't a solution, it's a prison. And once you're inside, there's no escape. Imagine your life under a CBDC system. You wake up, your alarm is set on your phone, which tracks your sleep patterns and reports your health insurance. You get coffee, your digital wallet automatically deducts the payment and logs your caffeine consumption for your health score. You drive to work, your car tracks your carbon emissions and charges you accordingly. The payment is automatic, non-negotiable, algorithmically determined. You want to buy lunch, but you've reached your calorie limit for the day. Your digital dollar won't authorize the purchase. Sorry, health mandate. You disagree with a government policy and donate to a protest group. Your account is flagged, your credit score drops, your ability to travel is restricted. You post something controversial online, social credit violation, your money expires 30% faster now, forcing you to spend or lose it. You try to save for retirement, but negative interest rates are automatically applied. Hoarding is antisocial. Consumption is civic duty. You try to withdraw cash, but there is no cash. Try to use crypto, but it's been banned or heavily restricted. Try to barter, but that's tax evasion. Try to opt out, but there's no alternative. No escape. No privacy. No freedom. Just compliance or poverty. Obedience or exclusion. Conformity or financial death. Sound extreme. China's already there. Their social credit system determines access to trains, planes, hotels, schools. Your behavior score affects your children's opportunities. Your political opinions determine your economic prospects. And it's all enforced through their digital currency. System, automatic, efficient, inescapable, and Western governments are watching, learning, adapting. The World Economic Forum openly discusses these systems, calls them the future. Klaus Schwab talks about the fourth industrial revolution, the fusion of physical, digital, and biological identities, the end of privacy as a concept, not as a warning, as a goal, as progress, as inevitable. The European Union is already implementing carbon tracking on bank accounts, preparing to limit transactions based on environmental impact. The UK is testing programmable digital pounds that can only be spent on approved goods. Canada has demonstrated willingness to freeze accounts for political reasons. Australia tracked citizens with QR codes during COVID and threatened those who didn't comply. New Zealand's Prime Minister spoke of creating two classes of citizens based on medical status. The precedents are being set. The infrastructure is being built. The justifications are being normalized. America is further behind than Europe or China in implementing CBDCs. But not because of principle, not because of constitutional concerns, not because of commitment to freedom, but because of technical challenges, because of competing interests between traditional banks and central banks, because of political gridlock, but those obstacles are temporary. And when the next crisis comes, when the emergency is declared, those obstacles will evaporate, and the digital dollar will be implemented with bipartisan support, under emergency powers, with sunset clauses that never actually sunset. Do you believe your elected representatives will protect you from this? Because they won't. They can't. The system is bigger than any individual politician, more entrenched than any administration. This is being coordinated at the central bank level, at the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, where central bankers from around the world meet and coordinate policy, where decisions are made that affect billions of people who never voted for anyone in that room, where the architecture of the new financial system is being designed without democratic input or constitutional constraints. The Innovation Hub, the Embers project connecting central banks of China, Thailand, UAE, and Hong Kong for digital currency transfers. The collaboration between the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, all working toward the same goal: digital currencies that replace cash, that enable control, that eliminated the last remnants of financial privacy and freedom. And the timeline is accelerating. European Central Bank aims for a digital euro implementation by 2026 or 2027. China's digital yuan is already operational and expanded. India has rolled out their digital rupee. Brazil is implementing their CBDC. Nigeria forced adoption by making old currency worthless. Over 100 countries are researching or piloting CBDCs, representing 95% of global GDP. This isn't hypothetical. It's happening right now. While most people have no idea what's being built, the Federal Reserve denies they're preparing to eliminate cash, says a digital dollar would coexist with physical currency, but that's what they always say before the transition, before the elimination, because you can't announce the prison before it's built. Can't tell people they're losing freedom before they've accepted the alternative. So you frame it as choice, as option, as additional convenience, until one day ... cash is no longer accepted anywhere, until physical currency becomes worthless, until the transition is complete and irreversible. And then the programming begins. The rules get implemented, the restrictions get applied, the control gets exercised. Not all at once. Gradually, a limit here, a restriction there, each justified by some pressing concern: climate crisis, health emergency, national security, economic stability. Always a reason, always a justification, until you wake up one day and realize you live in a financial panopticon where every transaction is watched, where every purchase requires permission, where money isn't a medium of exchange but a tool of control. But maybe you don't care. Maybe you think this won't affect you. You're law-abiding, politically moderate, socially compliant. You have nothing to hide. Why worry about surveillance if you're not doing anything wrong? Because the definition of wrong keeps changing. Because political winds shift. Because what's acceptable today becomes illegal tomorrow. Because power concentrated always gets abused eventually. Because systems built for security always get used for control. Because freedom surrendered is never voluntarily returned. Think about the Patriot Act, sold as temporary measures to fight terrorism, still in effect 24 years later and used for far more than terrorism. Think about income tax. Started as a temporary measure during World War I. Supposed to only affect the wealthy. Now, 40% of your income for life. Think about Social Security numbers. Never supposed to be used for identification. Now required for everything. Think about every surveillance tool ever created, always justified by noble purposes, always expanded beyond original intent, always used to control rather than protect. Why would a CBDC be different? Why would this time be the exception? When has centralized power ever voluntarily limited itself? When has surveillance infrastructure ever been dismantled once built? When has government control over citizen behavior ever decreased without revolution? It won't. It can't. Because that's not how power works. Power expands. Control tightens, freedom erodes. Not through sudden tyranny, through gradual acceptance, through normalized surveillance, through comfortable slavery, through the voluntary surrender of liberty for the promise of security. And once the digital dollar is implemented, once cash is eliminated, once every transaction requires government permission, there's no recourse, no alternative, no escape. You can't opt out of the monetary system, can't choose a different currency, can't barter your way through life. You're trapped, and your compliance is no longer voluntary. It's enforced automatically, algorithmically, perfectly. This is the future they're building, the prison they're constructing, the control system they're implementing, and they're counting on you not noticing until it's too late, not understanding until it's irreversible, not caring until it affects you personally, by which point there's nothing you can do. But there's still time. Not much, but some. While cash still exists, while alternatives are still legal, while the cage door is still open, you can prepare. You can protect yourself. You can refuse to participate in your own enslavement. How? Understand what's coming. Educate yourself on CBDCs, on financial surveillance, on social credit systems, on programmable money. Know what they're building so you can recognize it when they try to implement it. Knowledge is the first defense. Understanding is the foundation of resistance. Use cash, demand it, insist on it, make it inconvenient for businesses to refuse, because every cash transaction is a vote for privacy, for freedom, for the system they're trying to eliminate. And the more people use cash, the harder it becomes to eliminate it without obvious force. Diversify out of pure dollar dependence. Not financial advice, not illegal, just practical reality. Gold, silver, Bitcoin, assets that exist outside the banking system, that can't be frozen by bureaucrats, that preserve value when currencies collapse, that represent ownership rather than permission. Support politicians and policies that protect financial privacy, that oppose CBDCs, that resist surveillance expansion, that defend the right to transact freely. They're rare, often marginalized, dismissed as but they're the only ones willing to fight for freedoms most people take for granted. Most importantly, refuse to be get. When they tell you CBDCs are about convenience, no, they're about control. When they promise it won't eliminate cash, understand that's always the plan. When they frame opposition as conspiracy theory, recognize it as dismissal of legitimate concern. When they assure you there's nothing to worry about, remember that's what they always say before implementing exactly what you were worried about. The digital dollar isn't coming. It's here, being built, being tested, being prepared for implementation. The only question is whether enough people understand what is being done before it is too late to stop. Whether enough people value freedom over convenience, whether enough people are willing to fight for rights that should never have been threatened in the first place. And the clock is ticking. Every day, more infrastructure is built, more legislation is drafted, more public conditioning happens, more alternatives are eliminated, more preparation is completed until the moment arrives when they announce the digital dollar, not as a proposal, but as a necessity, not as an option, but as an emergency measure, not as a choice, but as the only way to save the economy, stop crime, fight climate change, prevent terrorism, ensure equity, protect democracy, or whatever justification polls best at the time. And if you're not prepared, if you haven't understood, if you haven't protected yourself, you'll accept it because the alternative will seem worse, because you won't have prepared alternatives, because resistance will seem impossible, because everyone else is accepting it, because what choice do you have? But there is a choice. There's always a choice between freedom and security, between privacy and surveillance, between self-determination and managed existence, between being a citizen and being a subject, between having rights and receiving permissions, between owning money and being allowed to spend it. The choice is yours, for now, but the window is closing. The prison is nearly complete. And once those doors lock, they don't open from the inside. If this revelation has shattered your assumptions about the future, if you're seeing the architecture of control being built in real time, you need to understand what comes next. Because the digital dollar is just the beginning. The next episode exposes the full scope of the surveillance state being constructed. The merging of financial control with social credit, the elimination of anonymity in every aspect of life. The creation of a technocratic control grid that would make Orwell's nightmares look quaint. Subscribe, turn on notifications, share this with everyone who still values freedom. Because what we reveal next connects every piece, every surveillance system, every control mechanism, every loss of liberty into one comprehensive picture of where this is all heading. And you need to see it before it's too late, before the cage closes, before resistance becomes impossible. See you on the other side, while you still can